things, I don't know that.
Yeah, do you know where they crossed at all? Not sure.
Maybe these guys know. These are kind of questions, you know, when we open for questions. What I know is what you're going to hear. You know, because I had to get tidbits along the way, and then some of the media started putting it out because people were contacting. Maybe the grandfather of one of the kids is reaching out or something. But, so, like I said, we just wait for them to get the states.
Where's the marshal?
You're just in the IA, sitting at the table having coffee.
You ready?
I am. We just got to wait for. Wait, yeah, we're ready.
Morning. Good. How are you?
Did you release it to you, and then you'll introduce the marshal?
Yeah, you're going to go through this one.
Yep, yep. And then that's what I told the marshal. I said, I'm going to pass it off to the chief, and then he's probably going to introduce you, because he'll have a couple things. And they'll probably have more questions for him, like what happened next one. I gave him the spelling of his name, so I'm not going to have to go through that nonsense. Have you met Kevin or Brian? This is Brian Taylor. This is Kevin Pearl. Oh, Michael.
You know what else?
All right. Okay. Good morning. To my left is Chief of the Waterbury Police, Fernando Spagnolo. To my far right is Captain Michael Panzillo. He's the commanding officer of the Criminal Investigations Bureau of the Waterbury Police Department. I'm Lieutenant David Severio, the Public Information Officer for the Waterbury Police Department. To my immediate right is U.S. Marshal Brian Taylor. He's part of the U.S. Marshal Service, District of Connecticut. In the middle over there is U.S. Deputy Marshal Kevin Peralt, United States Marshal Service Team Leader for the Connecticut Violent Crimes Fugitive Task Force, District of Connecticut. The Waterbury Police Department is pleased to report that Mariah Matthew, age 2, Dylan McGrath, age 5, and Madison McGrath, age 7, were back in Connecticut on March 16th, 2019. Throughout this investigation, law enforcement's focus was the safe return of Mariah, Dylan, and Madison. These 3 children were innocent of any wrongdoing. These children were victims. The Waterbury Police was notified on February 16th at approximately 12:30 p.m. that Crystal McGrath, age 29, left the DCF supervised visitation location in Waterbury with her 3 biological children, Mariah, Dylan, and Madison. The Waterbury Police responded and began an investigation. This investigation ultimately included several local, state, and federal agencies. These children were in Waterbury on February 16th on a supervised visit with Crystal McGrath. DCF was monitoring this visitation, which took place at McDonald's restaurant located at 510 Reedville Drive, Waterbury. The grandmother of these children, who resides in another state, has custody. At some point during this visitation, Crystal McGrath departed the restaurant with these 3 children. The investigation will later determine that Crystal McGrath departed 510 Reedville Drive in a red Volvo, operated by her boyfriend, Lester Joy, age 38. As soon as the Waterbury Police detectives developed the required information, they provided that information to the Connecticut State Police Message Center, who immediately issued a silver alert. Initially, the police had a poor video image of the vehicle and no plate information. Crystal McGrath, of the vehicle that Crystal McGrath, Lester Joy, and the 3 children departed in. On February 17th, Waterbury detectives determined that Lester Joy's brother gave him a 2000 red Volvo in 2018. Waterbury detectives continued to investigate and exhausted all leads to locate Crystal McGrath, Lester Joy, or the 3 children in Connecticut. Waterbury detectives, with the help of the Connecticut State Police, the Connecticut Intelligence Center, and the United States Marshal Service, continued to investigate. On February 17th, once the detectives were able to determine what plate was being used on the suspect vehicle, that was Connecticut Reg 417, Yankee Tango Yankee, the police, with the help of the Connecticut Intelligence Center, the U.S. Marshals, determined that the vehicle with that plate affixed to it was in Florida. Investigators determined that Crystal McGrath's mother lives in Florida. On February 17th, local law enforcement interviewed Crystal McGrath's mother, neither in Florida. Neither Crystal McGrath, Lester Joy, the 3 children, or the vehicle was located in Florida. On February 18th, the National Center for Missing and Abducted Children listed Mariah Matthew, age 2, Dylan McGrath, age 5, and Madison McGrath, age 7, as missing. By February 23rd, 2019, law enforcement had developed information and documented that the red Volvo had traveled south from Connecticut into Florida, into Louisiana, and then into Sealy, Texas. Waterbury detectives informed the Texas Department of Public Safety of the information available, and an Amber Alert was issued by that agency at that time. Over the next several days, several alerts were called into the National Center for Exploited Missing Children. These alerts were followed up on by various law enforcement agencies. None of these alerts were determined to be positive sightings. Alerts and notifications were sent to law enforcement agencies bordering Texas, Mexico, including Border and Homeland Security, Border Patrol and Homeland Security. On February 26th, the U.S. Marshals Service developed information that Crystal McGrath, Lester Joy, and the 3 children were likely in Juarez, Mexico. The U.S. Marshals were actively working with Mexico law enforcement officials to locate the 3 children. On March 6th, the U.S. Marshals confirmed that Crystal McGrath, Lester Joy, and the 3 children were at one point staying at a hotel in Juarez, Mexico. On March 8th, the U.S. Marshals developed information that Crystal McGrath, Lester Joy, and the 3 children were at a location in Mazatlan, Mexico. The U.S. Marshals, with the assistance of the Mexico federal law enforcement, conducted surveillance at a location in Mazatlan, Mexico. On March 9th, the U.S. Marshals, with the assistance of the Mexico federal law enforcement, located Crystal McGrath, Lester Joy, the 3 children, as well as the Volvo in Mexico. All were detained. The children were safe. The U.S. Marshals then, in conjunction with Mexican authorities, began making arrangements for their transfer back to the United States. By this time, Waterbury police already had warrants for both Crystal McGrath and Lester Joy for 3 counts each of custodial interference and 3 counts of risk injury with a bond of $500,000. On March 12th, Lester Joy and Crystal McGrath were transported back to the United States and are currently being held at the Denton County Sheriff's Office in Denton, Texas. They are charged as fugitives from justice and will be extradited back to Connecticut. The 3 children were safe but remained in Mexico and were housed in an immigration facility in that country suitable for children. On March 13th, representatives from the state of Connecticut, Department of Children and Families, began making arrangements to fly to return the 3 children to the United States. On March 16th, representatives from DCF and the grandmother who has custody of the 3 children flew to Mexico and returned the same day to Connecticut. The 3 children were brought to a hospital for a medical evaluation. The Waterbury Police Department would like to thank all the law enforcement agencies who assisted our officers and the detectives in this investigation. The Waterbury Police has an effective working relationship in partnership with our local law enforcement agencies in Connecticut, the Connecticut State Police, and all of our law enforcement agencies. The Waterbury Police has a detective assigned to the Connecticut Intelligence Center, which provided investigative support during this investigation. The Waterbury Police have 2 detectives assigned to the Fugitive Task Force operated by the United States Marshal Service, District of Connecticut. Make no mistake, the U.S. Marshal Service was the key law enforcement agency with the resources and skills to track, locate, and help us bring back these children and apprehend Crystal McGrath and Lester Joy. The U.S. Marshal Services maintains an effective relationship with the Mexican Federal Police, who are also instrumental in helping the U.S. Marshal Service with this investigation in their country. And it's this type of collaborative relationship and support between all law enforcement agencies involved that allowed a positive outcome for this investigation, the safe return home of Mariah, Dylan, and Madison. Specifically, the Waterbury Police would like to thank U.S. Marshal Brian Taylor, District of Connecticut, and U.S. Deputy Marshal Kevin Peralt for their investigative support throughout the entire time of this investigation. Without the assistance of the U.S. Marshals, Mariah, Dylan, and Madison would not have been located in Mexico, and Crystal McGrath and Lester Joy would not have been apprehended. At this time, I'll pass it off to Chief Spagnola for a few words.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Good morning. So again, I'd like to echo the Lieutenant's comments about the U.S. Marshal Service, Marshal Taylor, District of Connecticut, and the Deputy Marshal Peralt. Without their assistance in this investigation, we would completely be lost. They really deserve all the credit for locating the kids and bringing these 2 into custody, Joy and McGrath. You know, we have a very strong, long-standing relationship. We have 2 task force detectives here in the Waterbury Police Department under Captain Ponzillo's command. that work day in and day out with the Marshal Service, bringing fugitives into justice. I'd also like to comment on Commissioner Vanessa Durantis of DCF's role in this case. She was very active. We were on the phone constantly working, and she worked diligently to assist our investigative efforts in any way she could. At this point, Marshal, would you say a couple words?
Yeah, real quick.
Absolutely.
I want to thank, excuse me, I want to thank Waterbury Police Department for their continual assistance with our fugitive task force. We have a great relationship with Waterbury, and their tremendous help, especially with the Marshal Service primary responsibility of arresting fugitives and tracking sex offenders. So I want to thank the Chief again and Lieutenant. That's all.
Thank you.
At this time, if there's any questions?
So where exactly the marshals, do you know where they crossed into Mexico?
It's still, I don't want to get, sorry.
Sorry.
I don't want to get into details because it's still, it could be a further pending federal case, so I don't want to get details on where they crossed into Mexico.
How did they manage to cross into Mexico if we knew the license plate and Border Patrol and HSI was alerted?
We believe they drove over the border.
So they didn't go through a port of entry?
We know they drove over to Mexico. If they went to, we don't know if they went to a port of entry or some other area.
When you found, were you actually there when the kids were found? Was anyone of you?
No one from here was there.
How were they? I mean, this is obviously a traumatic thing. There was, I don't know if they just thought they were with mom for a vacation, or how were the kids when they were found?
Right, so again, as Lieutenant Silverio stated, DCF flew with the guardian, the grandmother, to Mexico, to bring the kids back to Connecticut, and DCF has a very elaborate plan on providing services for these children, but other than that, we really can't comment
I know that
on what their status is.
When the Amber Alert was issued, we were reporting that they were in danger or could be in danger, so I mean, was there any danger posed to them during this whole ordeal?
So Crystal McGrath, the maternal mother of the children, obviously had custody taken away from a court system here in Connecticut. So Lester Joy is known to police, has a prior convictions and on the National Sex Offender Registry. Therefore, it's not a good situation, and we were concerned about the children and their safety.
Does she have a violent criminal record too?
I can't comment on that. I don't know off the top of my head.
Why was it, what changed between the Silver Alert in Connecticut and then the Amber Alert in Texas? What made you change it? It was just because of the proximity to Mexico, or?
So as Lieutenant Silverio said, in the beginning of this investigation, detectives had very poor video image of the vehicle and no plate number. The Silver Alert and the Amber Alert, the difference is you need extremely specific information and accurate information to distribute an Amber Alert. As we all know, Amber Alerts are put up on billboards. They go throughout the nation. They're put up on, traffic signs all throughout our interstates. A Silver Alert similarly does the same thing, but with less information. The problem being is if you put out inaccurate information on an Amber Alert, we end up chasing down leads that aren't exactly what we need to be, and we could be missing something more pertinent to the investigation in another area. By the time they got to Texas, we were confident in the make and the model of the vehicle and the marker number of the vehicle, so the Texas Department of Public Safety, which, by the way, was a great help in this investigation, was more than willing to issue the Amber Alert at that time.
Did Crystal say why she chose to take her children at that moment?
It's an ongoing investigation. They're still working through the extradition process right now.
Being cooperative?
I believe they've waived extradition.
I had some more questions about the grandmother. You had said that the grandmother has custody, the one that's in Florida has custody of the grandkids? Is that correct? When you were reading your statement,
It's the grandmother in Delaware that has custody.
Yeah,
it's
there's
a
right.
different grandmother.
It's a different grandmother, not the
Okay,
grandmother in
then
Florida.
you said that they drove
Yeah,
down to
okay.
Florida.
Yeah, different
Okay,
grandmother, yeah.
gotcha.
So are there further arrests possible? The other grandmother or anybody else potentially abetting them in getting to Mexico?
So as long as the investigation is active and open, there's always a potential for further arrests and/or further charges on the two parties that are in custody.
Do you have the condition of the children? We heard they were taken to a hospital. Do we have information on how they're doing?
They're safe.
Medically,
Again, I can't comment on any condition right now.
Why are there no kidnapping charges on this right now?
Crystal McGrath is the maternal mother. She did have supervised visitation. These were the charges at the current time when the investigation began, after conferring with the state's attorney, that were appropriate. That does not mean that they can't get subbed up or changed at a later court appearance.
Where are they now, Chief? I know you said they were their grandmother, but where?
The children or McGrath and,
No, not the children, sorry.
again, they're in Connecticut.
Okay, they are in.
In the
Yes.
custody of DCF at this point?
They're in Connecticut.
Oh.
DCF is involved. The court-appointed guardian is involved, but they're here in the state.
But this is a different court-appointed guardian than the one they had before, is that right?
I didn't say that, and I don't really know. Again, these are all questions that DCF needs to work through. You know, they're working diligently on caring for the children and providing them the services needed at this time.
Can you provide more details about how she ended up getting out of the McDonald's with the kids?
It's an open investigation right now, so we're not going to release any further information on the specifics of the crime.
What about Lester Joy's history? You said he was a registered sex offender. When did that crime occur? And
He's been on the sex offender registry for a significant period of time. You know, at one point I remember somebody saying about 10 years, but I don't have specifics on the crime or the charge back then.
And why are they being held in Denton?
So that's where they were brought back over into the States from Mexico. I'm not sure why that decision was made, but they were sent to Denison, Texas.
Could you talk to us a little bit about the efforts as far as the U.S. Marshals in cases like this where, I mean, we're not in a proximity to the border, but yet you have that risk of knowing that once somebody's out of your sight, they could be going anywhere.
What exactly you're asking is very general what you're asking me.
About the efforts, I mean, the communication that you guys have to.
We have fugitive task forces throughout the United States, and we contacted immediately districts on the border in Texas and asked them for their assistance. They have great relationships with Homeland Security on the border, and we also have personnel who work at the embassy in Mexico City, so that's our relationship with down at the border in Mexico.
I mean, was your agency brought in once the Amber Alert went out in Texas, or it was before that?
We have a task force. We work state and local cases all the time in Waterbury, so we were brought in immediately once their assistance from the detectives.
Now, you got information that the car had driven through Louisiana, Florida. Were you getting tips from Just Good Samaritans? Where was this information coming from?
All through investigative means. You know, the detectives and the Marshal Service worked very hard in tracking this vehicle.
Otherwise, it's a shipping port, otherwise it's not a tourist destination. We think it was a waypoint in a bigger plan to move on to another country or another part of Mexico, or was that their destination?
Again, it's an open investigation. There's still a lot of questions that need to be answered as far as those components are concerned. Anything else? All right, great. Marshall, anything else?
No, thank you, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you very
Appreciate it.
much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
Check.